Welcome to Fred Forrest TV. My name is Ruth Erickson, and I'm a doctoral candidate in the history of art at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. And I've come to Paris for 9 months with a Fulbright Fellowship to study the art and work of Fred Forrest. And as a historian of art, I mostly study his work from the 1960s and 70s, but what first attracted me to Fred's work is the many connections that I see with contemporary art happening today. And in particular, I think 3 themes are important. The first is the way that Fred uses all kinds of media. There are no boundaries to the types of media that he engages with. And the second is his collective and collaborative practices and his interest in dialogue. And the third is his long-standing political engagement. So we're going to explore those 3 themes together today. So in order to illustrate the idea that Fred uses all kinds of media to make his artwork, I want to talk about 3 projects. The first project Fred started in 1972, and it's called Space Media. And he started it by actually inserting a blank square into the journal Le Monde. And in this square, just below it, he invited readers to respond however they wanted to, and to send their responses to him by mail, and they later then exhibited them. He got hundreds of responses to this blank space of drawings and words and ideas. He then had the idea to insert a blank space into the broadcast of a television show, as well as into the radio. And in all of these blank spaces, he's taking these mass media forms and creating space for viewers to reflect and to respond to them, as opposed to just being passive in their engagement with these media. So if he engaged those mass media in all kinds of ways in the early 70s, he also in 1973 he was working with the video, and with the video camera a lot, the porta-pack on his shoulder. And in 1973, he went into an older person's home, a retired person's home, to create Video Troisième Âge. And in this video, he actually set up an atelier in this home so that people that were living in the home could actually make their own videos about their life. He taught them how to use the equipment, and these were quite old people who wouldn't normally have access to this kind of new technology. And the result are hundreds of minutes of films about their everyday life. Another project that he started in the 1970s but is actually continuing to today is called The Territory. And for this project, it's actually a physical location in Ancerville. It's about 40 minutes north of Paris. And it's an old chateau that is hundreds of years old. And in this chateau, he's installed installations in all of the various rooms. He's also created a network of communication where the chateau actually the territory receives postcards from all over the world, and he's invited artists from all over the world to come there to use the land in order to make art projects. So this is a project that has endless possibilities. It's still ongoing today as using this physical structure to create communication between artists as well as a physical space where they can all come together. The next aspect of Fred's work that I'd like to talk about is his interest in collaboration and dialogue. I've already hinted at this before, but Fred actually formed a number of groups in his lifetime. And the first was in 1974. He formed the Collectif d'Art Sociologique, and he formed this with Jean-Paul Thénault and Hervé Fischer. And this group wasn't thought of as an exclusive group, but actually as a research group that was open to other artists to join and for other artists to participate in. They did various projects, but one of the most interesting is that they opened a school in Paris. It was called the École Sociologique Interrogative. And they opened this school where they invited professors and thinkers and philosophers to come in and give classes for free that anybody could attend. And this is the way in which they wanted to make their projects and make their artwork engage a broader public and offer something back to the community. And then in 1980s, he founded the Aesthetic of Communication with Mario Costa, which then proceeded to a dialogue and a partnership which has continued to present. And anybody who has worked with Fred like me knows how much he enjoys collaboration and dialogue. The third thing I want to talk about Fred's work is his political engagement. And by politics with Fred, what I don't mean associated with any political party on the right or on the left, but I mean a politics that's much broader and bigger than that, and a politics that's about engaging and being actively aware of your life and your associations. So, for instance, the best illustration of this is a project he did in Sao Paulo, Brazil in 1973. It was called The Blanks Invade the Street. And for this project, he actually had people carry signs as if they would for a protest, but they were blank, carrying on the idea of the blank from his space media project. And so that they manifested themselves in the street simply for the act of manifesting and for the act of a group activity, rather than carrying forward any exact political message. More recent projects that he's done that have been more overtly political are his various processes against Centre Georges Pompidou, Beaubourg. And in all of these processes and campaigns, Fred's campaigning for transparency, for the transparency of how public money is being used and sharing that information with the public. One particularly interesting story that I love that Fred told me is that in 1994, Hans Hacke and Pierre Bourdieu, maybe the most famous political artist and the most famous political sociologist, they put out a book together called Libre-Échange, Free Exchange. This is a set of conversations between them. And at the opening of this book, there was a huge talk and a celebration and a party. And Fred raised his hand and asked one of the most pertinent questions that nobody had the courage to ask. He asked how Pierre Bourdieu's post as a professor and as a world-renowned intellect then actually contributed toward the increasing value of Hacke's work. So that the very engagement in this intellectual dialogue and this political engagement, how that in fact then contributed to the enriching of Hacke's own work on the market. And they didn't have a good response, but it's the capacity to pose these kinds of questions that's so impressive in Fred's work. What I've tried to give you today is just a sampling of Fred Forrest's artwork and projects. He has hundreds of other projects, things that he's done in the past and things that he's continuing to do today. And what I wanted to talk about in these three projects was the way in which he is interested in expanded practices of production. He is interested in collaborative and collective works, and he's also politically engaged. These are three themes that I think are the most important themes that we see happening in contemporary art today, that young artists are continuing to work on. And what I want to do is try and situate Fred Forrest as an important precursor and precedent to these incredibly important themes that are happening today in contemporary art. So I'll leave you there, and I'll see you next time on Fred Forrest TV.